Welcome to Talking Giants, presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. We got ourselves a mailbag pod, the pre-trade deadline pod. Justin, the trade deadline's on election day. That's kind of crazy, right?
That's kind of crazy. But there's nothing the NFL could do about that. I guess it's an every 4-year type of deal. Maybe push it to Wednesday.
How come we're not running again this year?
I mean that's a you decision. I mean you're the president of the show. You're the head honcho of the show, and I follow your orders. So it's whatever.
All right, then vote for Kadarius Toney, because that's
okay.
who I'm going to vote for. So make sure to vote for Kadarius Toney.
Well, who are you putting second on the ticket?
My friend Juan. I think he'd be a good vice president.
That's fair.
He's a good dude. He's trustworthy. He'd keep Kadarius Toney in line.
Fair.
But also not stop him from leading. You know what I mean? Real good dynamic there. Anyways, we got a mailbag pod to get into. We got to talk about the trade deadline, guys that might be on the block. Will the Giants be buyers? Blah, blah, blah. All that good stuff. Justin, before we get into it, we got some special people that bring you this episode. We got Die Hard for Big Blue. I wonder if he's a Giants fan or not. Which, by the way, we have somebody who's not a Giants fan, who's a Commanders fan, who subscribed to Patreon to listen to our reactions to the Giants Commanders games. He's a Football Today fan. We got Zay, not Zay Flowers, just Zay, not Zay Jones either. Remember when Zay Jones was losing his mind and then just came back as a normal person? Good for him. And that's it for right now. Justin, who are these people?
And that's it for right now. Those wonderful people, including, are you talking about Anthony?
What?
Anthony? He's the Commanders fan?
Oh, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, by the way. Oh, by the way, the guy that you said you knew, you didn't know.
What?
Remember there was a guy like, oh, I know that guy. And you didn't know him.
Well, then that person's lying, because I'm telling the truth. Patreon.com/talkofgiants. Actually, no, I'm lying. Our Patreon members are always right. Patreon.com/talkofgiants. $2 a month plus some other tiers. You can hang out with us live while we record the shows. Bobby Skinner will send you some stickers in the mail. Plus, there's some shirt raffles. Patreon.com/talkofgiants. We got a lot of people bumping for a Wednesday evening mailbag episode. I love it.
Yeah, how about that? Let's get into it. All right, take it away, Steve.
Mail time.
Mail time. The mail's here. Come on. Here's the mail. It never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
Thanks, Steve from Blue's Clues. Justin, let's get into the mail.
Let's get into the mail, shall we? The first question is coming from NFL Turkmeistan. That was terrible. NFL Turkmenistan. There you go. Talked about him before. It's been said that the Giants are not likely to trade Slayton or Azeez at the trade deadline unless they get an offer that they couldn't refuse. At what price would you start considering either of those guys, Bobby Skinner?
So let's just use this opportunity to talk about the Giants trade deadline as a whole. And I did some polls to see where people are at. And I just did what I think would be maybe not what's being offered right now, but if somebody was to offer, what would make sense. So Darius Slayton for a 5th round pick. 25% of people would do that. Azeez for a 6, which is what Josh Uche got from the Chiefs. 9%, only 9% would do that. And then I did a Neal pick swap because 1st round draft picks, last forever. So a Neal and a 6th round pick for a 5th round pick, 63% of people would do that. So I was actually a little surprised that more people were willing to trade Slayton, but then I remembered his flaws are drops, while Azeez is our run defense and health, so fans hate drops more than bad run defense. Let's talk about Slayton first, Justin. We'll go one by one and see if we miss anybody. In reality, there's just nothing realistic I would trade Darius Slayton for. Devontae Adams got traded for a 3rd that turns into a 2nd if he's all pro and they go to the AFC Championship game. So he got traded for a 3rd. Amari Cooper and a 6th round pick were traded for a 3rd and a 7th. So even then, they had to do a 6th round, 7th round pick swap and a 3rd. Amari Cooper had no money on his deal, and he's a much better player than Darius Slayton. DeAndre Hopkins was traded for a 5th. That'll turn into a 4th if the Chiefs make the Super Bowl and he plays over 60% of the regular season snaps. And then Deontay Johnson, who's the most comparable to Darius Slayton, was traded for a 6th and a 5th round pick swap. Now, Deontay Johnson, I think they're comparable player-wise. Johnson's more of a headache than Darius Slayton is. But so if Adams and Cooper are only netting thirds and Johnson's netting a pick swap, then nothing realistic for Slayton would make me happy. But I'd listen to like a 3rd round pick, but even then, that'd be a contender at the end of the 3rd round. So I just want Slayton here for the next QB. Like, I want my next QB to have a secondary player to create explosives and can trust to run the entire route tree. I would be willing to pay him the comps of the Gabe Davis, Darnell Mooney contracts that those guys got this offseason, even though it may not cost that much because it's a stronger wide receiver free agent class this offseason. You don't have the freshness of that cap boom that you had last year. So in reality, I don't see anything that's realistic that I would trade Slayton for.
Yeah, it would have to be a back end of the 3rd for me. I would all, and if it even takes like, the Giants throwing a 5th or a 6th round pick, but Slayton's not netting a 3rd round pick if Devontae Adams netted a 3rd round pick and if Amari Cooper netted a 3rd round pick, he's just not going to go for that high. 4th round pick maybe, but again, you have to think about it. It's a back end of the 4th round pick.
I wouldn't do that.
I mean, I am in a position, Bobby, where I want Darius Slayton to come back. So it's not just a half a year of Darius Slayton. For me, it's if the Giants trade away Darius Slayton, odds are you're cutting ties in that relationship. I don't know if he would want to come back after being traded, especially for being here for so long.
That doesn't really happen in football.
Yeah, it doesn't. No, so that doesn't really happen. So I'm also viewing Darius Slayton as a possibility of the Giants offering him a contract this offseason, and then probably 1 or 2 more years of Darius Slayton, not just this half of year. What does he cost? Because Jalen Hyatt just has not, he's not a factor on this team right now. So Darius Slayton is the wide receiver too.
Yeah, so I wouldn't trade him for anything less than a day 2 pick, and he's not going to get that. And
Nope.
when everyone talks about Slayton, it's like, oh, well, what if you lose him for nothing? Well, then don't. Like, I'm coming from the context of what I would do. So I would keep him. I would match whatever offer he got or throw a little more at him. Obviously, you could get this insane deal, but you can't live life as an NFL franchise going, what if he gets this outlier type of huge contract offer? In retrospect, then you wish you would have done something. But no, I want Slayton here for the next quarterback. Like that's the reality. He's a top 10 player on the team. I want him here for the next quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this too with the Giants. Ironically enough, it's the next guy that we're going to talk about, Azeez Ojulari, whose contract is also up. But the list of Giants that are pending free agents is not a daunting one. So Azeez Ojulari, within a certain reason, should be a priority to bring back because there's nobody else that's going to be competing for major money that the Giants have to bring back and re-sign. They didn't draft well in 2021, so there's nobody from that draft class that they are looking at, that you have to pay and that's down the road or anything like that. So
yeah, just Azeez. So now let's talk about Azeez because I think Azeez is a more complicated. I don't see Azeez netting more than a 6 because of the Josh Uche trade, but I'm not tied to Azeez Ojulari the way I am a Darius Slayton. He's been injured 6 different times since 2022 started. He's not a good run defender. He has the worst pass rush win rate of Burns, Kayvon, and Azeez. He's played well in this absence of Kayvon, but he's also benefited from stunts and Dexter Lawrence and stuff. But the issue with Azeez is even if he finishes out the season strong, I'm not investing a ton into Azeez because I don't know what his I can't bet on his health, right? Like you just can't. It's hard to bet on players who have health issues and aren't like these great players, right? There's players who have health issues, but it's like they're great, so you do what you can to keep them. Azeez isn't that. So I would not invest a ton into Azeez, but I would like to keep him. But the reality is there's a chance he walks. But here's the thing with Azeez too. I have no idea what he's going to get in the open market. Like, I have no idea. Like, he's not going to get a Bryce Huff deal. I saw some people throw that out there. That's not happening. He could get $8 million per year. I see that being like the max for a guy who's been a part-time player. But I don't know what he's got. I would entertain a 5th round pick for Azeez. I'm not betting on his health.
I would also entertain a 5th round pick. I think I would push somebody for a 4th Because again, you have to think about this is a back end of the fourth for a team that's competing that wants Azeez Ojulari, or maybe there is a team that wants an edge rusher that may be picking in the front end of the draft. Then it kind of depends on where the team is at that's asking, right? Azeez Ojulari is first in the NFL over the last 3 weeks in sacks with Will Anderson Jr. And I think they have 5.
He's 10th overall.
Yeah, and he's like top 12, top 15, and I know he's top 8 over the last 3 weeks. He's like top 15 in pass rush productivity as well. So, like, I don't think Josh Uche is, I think over their career, I think Josh Uche is a fair comparison, but if you're a team that needs an edge rusher and needs an edge rusher that's performing now, Josh Uche has 2 sacks and 3 QB hits on the year, according to Pro Football Reference. Azeez Ojulari has 6 sacks, 7 QB hits, 6 tackles for loss. Like, Azeez Ojulari is having that kind of Kayvon Thibodeau type of year last year where all he's doing is kind of producing these negative plays, which could really help and benefit a team. So, I mean, if the Giants can push somebody to give up a 4th-round pick that is the back end of the 4th round or a 5th-round pick that is decent, I'm for it, because I am with you where the health scares me for Azeez Ojulari, because he could have a great year this year, and then he could get hurt in the spring or the summer of next year, and then we don't hear from him for the whole year, and that scares me.
Yeah, but and again, like I just think Uche is comparable.
Through their careers, but Azeez is lighting it up now. Uche's not lighting it up
but
now.
NFL teams aren't going to up the value off of a 3-game sample size. Like if and Uche's has been and Uche's played more this year. Like think about Azeez before Kayvon get injured. What would the conversation be then? Now obviously,
he wasn't really playing. He wasn't really playing.
Agree, but Uche hasn't been playing a ton either. You know what I mean?
Production's production. No, but I just think production's production, where it's like you have a guy that's, pretty close to, he's he's second on the team in sacks. He has the most sacks among edge rushers so far this year. And I think that the Giants could possibly, like, hey, if you want this guy, he could be yours for this price, and he could produce negative plays for you, maybe even in the postseason for you at this price, or else he's just going to stay here.
And we'll see, but I'm not like we love to react to the most recent sample size. Like I'm worried about Azeez is a bad run defender, and he's got a huge injury problem. So I would entertain stuff for him. So and he's not a starter the way Slayton is. And here's another part of this too, is I would love to improve the Giants' edge room with premium capital, and I would be hesitant to draft a wide receiver in the top 10, Justin, after having Malik Neighbors and if you kept Slayton. Like, if the Giants have the right edge rusher in front of them in the top 10, I would bring him on with Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. I know everyone gets fascinated with fucking positions, no matter how many times history teaches us to draft, look for the great players. But I would be willing to do that. Where wide receiver, I'd be a little hesitant.
But they're not going to. Here's the thing, though, what we've learned about this Giants regime. Pretty confident that they're not going to use a somewhat of a premium pick, like a top 100, maybe a top 100, maybe like a 3rd-round pick. But that they're not going to use like a 1st or a 2nd-round pick on an edge rusher, right?
I don't know that that's true.
Based on previous history, they're not, because they do like to just touch on the positions that they need.
Okay. Well, that's not, again, I'm going off of my reasoning, not Joe Shane's faulty draft for need reasoning.
No, I agree with you. Like hell yeah, let's make that position of strength even more of a strength. We know that they typically don't like to or even want to do that.
And then Evan Neal. I'd trade Evan Neal for anything. I know I know people want a last gasp ditch at guard, but let's say you do. Like, they're not doing it this year. So in the offseason, they transition him to guard. That sounds good, but what's the plan there? Are you planning on him being your first backup? Because that's really risky to have him be your first backup at a position he's never played in the NFL, and you've never seen any evidence of him playing good in the NFL. And I also don't think that just makes him good by going to guard. I know everyone likes to point to Eric Flowers, but they're different players. And Eric Flowers wasn't some great guard. He was just serviceable for a couple of years. And then is he your second backup? Like I just doubt it happening. So like I don't see anyone else having any trade value on this team. We'll talk about it in a second. Like, that's in reality. But, like, I would trade Evan Neal for anything. Like, the Giants could trade. They could swap 7th-round picks, and I'd be willing to get rid of Evan Neal. I view him as a 0. And the fact that he was drafted in the 1st round, there's always teams that say, but what if I get him? I'd be willing to trade him for anything.
I agree. I if anything, I would view getting the roster spot back as, which this is so effed up to say, getting the roster spot back as an upgrade too, where it's a roster spot and a backup offensive line spot that can come open that can be allocated by somebody that they actually may want to play at some point if somebody gets hurt. Because right now it's Josh Azudu and Evan Neal that are taking up space on an NFL roster, 2 backup spots on an NFL roster when the Giants, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll do not even want to play them. That's bad.
Yeah. And then I don't see anyone else having any trade value unless you dumped Hyatt for like a 7-6 swap, but I don't even know if he would garner that at this point. You got to remember, the NFL let him get to the 3rd round, and he's done nothing, really. And the only other thing is, like, if we got like some shocking like Deontay Banks trade or something of that nature, but that's not going to happen. So
no,
I don't see anything else happening outside of those. I don't see anything happening, to be honest. I don't think they do anything at this trade deadline, which they've been a team that has done more trade. They've done just as many trades as anybody since like 2019 at the deadline. I think this is going to be a quiet year for them.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Unless does a team? I'm even just thinking of this. Like, does a team want an athlete like Isaiah Simmons for some reason?
Anybody could have had him in the offseason, and he sat on the open market for a month.
It's very true, and he hasn't really done anything this year. Besides, he did have the block kick. If somebody wants him for special teams, yeah. But anything major, I don't see happening either. Besides Slayton or Azeez, but even then,
Slayton
I view
or
it as
Azeez
unlikely.
are only people with value, and I don't see whatever they're going to be offered being worth it. Azeez, again, Slayton, I'm just really not entertaining at all. All right, Justin, next question.
Locked by Drew at Sexter Lawrence. Here we go. Will we bring in Drew Lock for an ad?
You thought we were going to do this whole thing over again? We're not. Justin, why don't you talk to us about something?
Oh, I will, and I'll talk to you about DraftKings. There's a chill in the air. There's leaves falling to the ground, and there's football on every single weekend, and that's what fall is all about. You can make each weekend even more exciting by getting into the action with our partners at DraftKings, the DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. I've been hot in fantasy recently. Whoever I draft in fantasy, odds are they're scoring some touchdowns, including Calvin Austin. Hello. How about that? Calvin Austin had 2 touchdowns or just the special teams one? I forget. I think he had 2.
2.
I was right.
He beat
Right
Drew
now,
Phillips, speaking of the username.
Right now, all new customers who bet just $5 will instantly get $200 in bonus bets when you use code WORLD. Talking Giants versus the world, and staying on the action. Use your $200 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings with players that I draft in the fantasy draft come the preview pod on Friday. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. New customers use promo code WORLD. You can bet $5 on any wager. Get $200 back in bonus bets instantly. It's free money. It's promo code WORLD. Only at the DraftKings Sportsbook. You will be glad you did, Bobby Skinner.
Be glad you did. All right, next question.
Alfred at Cryptic Alfred. Now that we're about halfway through the season, what are your thoughts so far on year 2 for the 2023 draft class?
It is not good. This is going to set up the next question, too, by the way. Let me ask you this. What do you think right now for where that player was taken has been the best pick so far?
For where that player was taken? I would... John Michael Schmitz has not been a...
I think it's JMS.
I also think it's JMS. Yeah.
He's been an average center this year. He's had some bad moments in pass pro, but he hasn't been a liability at all. He hasn't had those like gets his ass beat consistent games like he did last year against like the Commanders. The Rams hasn't had those. Hopefully Fedarian. I know I saw your video on Fedarian Mathis. That could be they line him up on the center a lot. That could be a tough matchup. In the run game, I think he's pretty good when using power, the wide zone. He's a part of the reason why the Giants can't run a lot of wide zone. But So I think he's been the best one. But that's like, think about how we just described that player, and he's the best one. Deonte Banks, you can argue, he could be a good cornerback too. But my argument has been like, to be a good cornerback two in the NFL, you have to be a decent cornerback one, and he hasn't been that yet. You traded up for him. Now you bench him mid-game. Now, I haven't given up on Banks. If you ask me who's going to be the best player out of this group a year from now, it would be Deonte Banks, and I don't think anyone really challenges that. But it hasn't been great so far. Jalen Hyatt's an F. Especially when you traded a 4th-round pick to trade up for him.
That's the killer.
Eric Gray's a D at best. And then you had your 6th and 7th round picks. They're not, I don't look at Trey Hawkins as a fine 6th round pick so far. We can judge that one a little more in year 3, year 4. Jordan Riley, Javarius Owens, those aren't W's as 7th round picks, but I'm not being like, how the hell did you take these guys in the 7th round? But at the end of the day, there's no win in this draft class. And 2022 draft class actually looks better comparatively, which is crazy to fucking say. Like, this is looking like a bad draft class.
I'll tell you the thing that really hurts this draft class is that you didn't get an extra dart to throw in the 4th round. And that's what makes the Hyatt pick hurt that much more, because if Jalen Hyatt did come at the expense of the 4th round pick that year, right?
Yep, and you traded a 5th round pick, which they would have had, that was before the 5th round pick that they kept for Deonte Banks.
So this past year, they had 4 picks in the top 107. In 2023, you had Jalen Hyatt, who you traded up for at pick 73, and then you didn't have another draft pick until pick 172. Having that extra dart to possibly throw and landing a player that could be somewhat serviceable within the top 100 or even slightly after the top 100 or even just the top 150, because Eric Gray was pick 172, like I said. Having just another top 150 pick maybe would have been, all right, this draft class is there's still a little bit of wait and see with this draft class. Hey, there's this extra player that they took in the 4th round that they have to wait to develop on. And because you have Jalen Hyatt and you also traded up for Jalen Hyatt and he came at the cost of that player, that's what makes this draft class even freaking worse. I'm with you with Banks. You need a CB1. That's the bad thing about Banks. What hurts about Banks is that there were other players in the secondary in particular that went after him, like Joey Porter Jr., like Brian Branch, who, those are players that have been...
Both players we had graded as first rounders. We did not have Banks as graded as a first rounder.
No, we did not. I love Branch. I love Branch and you love Porter.
I love Branch too. Don't do this shit to me right now. Okay, I called Branch the smartest player in the draft. Okay, clear first rounder. People stop overthinking the safety position. Don't do this shit to me. I'm
not doing this shit to you. I'm not. But Porter was your guy, and Branch was we both had our guys there. And JMS has been, I think I view him as a slightly above average run blocker right now, and at least according to, if you compare his numbers across the position, he is still a kind of below average center in the National Football League right now. And the only bad thing about that is that he's 25 years old. How much more is he actually going to grow as time goes on? Even though I do think he can still continue to get better as the years go on. But I don't call John Michael Schmitz this absolute stud at center like we thought that we were going to walk away from. And I view that as disappointing. So not good.
Agreed. Agreed.
I don't view this draft class as like a disaster, because if you walk away from it with Banks as a CB2, John Michael Schmitz as your starting center, Eric Gray maybe can make it through his rookie
running back.
Eric Gray can maybe make it through his rookie contract, and if Trey Hawkins can make it through his rookie contract, I view that as not a disastrous draft class, right? It's not good, though.
I view it as a pretty bad draft class. I think we're grading it on Giants' draft class curve.
I guess that is true.
It's a pretty bad draft class to me. Which sets up the next question, Justin. Ask the next question.
Yeah, the next question is, in Dexy We Trust, the second Dexter Lawrence related name and user we have, at Dexy is him. Has Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen earned the right to draft their own QB? There's been many times where they passed up on multiple QBs, such as Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and even Lamar Jackson in free agency. I don't know if that's true. And refused to sign a competent backup Bobby Skinner. So basically the question is, has Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen earned the right to draft their own QB?
So the Fields, Russ, the Lamar thing, that was league-wide kind of collusion. That part's not that important to me. But I want you to tell me, and you, like, say you're the most optimistic Joe Schoen fan. Tell me why they deserve, and him and Daboll deserve to draft a quarterback.
Patience, number one.
That's okay.
And number two, Brian Daboll should get to work with a quarterback of his choosing. Those, I think, are the two best cases. And patience and I will say patience and process, where things just don't happen sometimes in the NFL. And there are some organizations that do turn things around pretty relatively quickly, right? But still, things just don't happen. Snap your fingers, happen in the NFL like that. And while Joe Schoen's draft classes have been far from perfect, especially, the 2022 and 2023, 2024 looks like a home run so far with a lot of those picks. But I would say patience and Brian Daboll deserves to work with the quarterback are like the two biggest reasons, right?
I actually think those are the two only good reasons. Is like you give them a 4-year plan to do their thing and draft a QB up, and like you're basically giving them a kind of a mulligan on keeping Daniel Jones, and even then they structured the DJ contract to be a 2-year contract. They didn't realize that it would get this bad. And then I think the Daboll part is the best argument. Like, as I would love to have Brian Daboll to be able to mold a young QB. And I think he'd teach him the right way instead of being an RPO, play action, like light lift. Like, let's have your best rookie stats development. I think he would develop him the right way. That is it. And there would be if there was any error, the error I think would be on the side of aggression with working with that young QB. So that's my main reason. But outside of that, man, like there's not like we talked about the last draft class. 2022 has been bad, and this is more Joe Schoen than Brian Daboll. Like, I know we like the 2024 draft class, but we always overrate the draft class in the moment. Even like think about how you felt about last year's draft class at this time last year. Think about how you like 22's draft class. Like, we always overrate the draft class in the moment unless it's a disaster. And now this one has shown the best returns early by far. But you can do that when the first two were awful. The Daboll thing is there, but at the same time, like Daboll's not like some genius, and I think play calling has been worse compared to with Kafka as the play caller. So now, this is my worry about this: is now you're gonna be put into a year 4 QB or bust spot. Like, to me, that's just a recipe for disaster. And I go back to my draft day speech, where it's like, well, if they don't draft a quarterback now, they could be in a spot to never be able to get their quarterback. And that is 100% true. And getting a good QB in the draft makes everything and everyone look better. But the shot of getting that QB to make everything and everyone look better is not the reason to hold on either. Like, show me you can build a good roster, and then I'll tell you, yeah, you deserve to draft a QB to that roster. Like, you've built a good roster. You deserve to put, a finishing piece on that spot, But they haven't been able to do that. Like, that's my thing, is they have not done anything that says, this is why. It's just patience, and I think Daboll can work well with a young QB. And we did our top 15 players list last week, and I love doing that because it's great to reference. Let's go through it. Because you talk about when people talk QB away. Maybe, we did the QB away question a few weeks ago. I don't think they're a QB away from Super Bowl contention, unless you're talking about a top 3 quarterback. But they are a QB away from consistent playoff contention. But a lot of that is not because of Joe Schoen as a roster builder. Like, top 3, the players I put as in the good category: Gettleman, Dexter Lawrence; Gettleman, Andrew Thomas; Malik Neighbors, Schoen draft; Brian Burns, Joe Schoen trade; Bobby Okereke, who hasn't been as good this year, Schoen free agency; Kayvon Thibodeau, Schoen draft; Darius Slayton, Dave Gettleman; and then Jermaine Illuminor, I think it was the other one, Schoen free agency. Like, those were the players that we were decidedly good, and 2 of them are draft picks: Malik Neighbors and Kayvon Thibodeau. Malik Neighbors and Kayvon, and again, I think Nubin and Phillips, they could be there, but you can't say that right now. Malik Neighbors is the only person from that draft who you can say flat out right now, he's a good player. Like, he's a real advantage in the NFL. And even Kayvon is a little murky, as we'll get to in our next question. We talk about the love for Azeez and what he's been doing. Guess what? That's again another Dave Gettleman draft pick. And this is not to say that Gettleman was good. It's just Gettleman was bad. And then look at this situation. So we have 10 more games to get through, or 9 more games to get through. 10 more weeks, Justin. I think we should all wait a month and a half to see where we really feel at when it comes to like this regime and shit, and maybe shit does change in that time period. But you will not hear me at this current state of this team say they deserve to draft a QB. They've done nothing outside of Brian Daboll being a good offensive coach for a young QB to show me why they deserve it. And patience is a reason, but it's not a great reason.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't love the I like Indexy We Trust, and I think it's a good question to ask. I don't think NFL teams should operate from the standpoint of what do these people deserve to do. And John Mara, I think John Mara has operated from the standpoint of Dave Gettleman deserves to keep his job, and this person deserves this. Eli Manning deserves the respect to stay for much longer than he should have. So
when you're really good, you do deserve.
Right. But they
you need to be good to get that deserve.
And they have not. Like Brian Daboll and Joe Shane,
it's like saying Daniel Jones deserves a wide receiver one, like it's basically the same argument, just for a different role.
Did they deserve it in 2022, coming off the winning season in the playoff berth?
Brian Daboll did.
Yeah,
Again, I think Brian Daboll has an argument. I don't think Joe Shane has put together anything to give me a good argument on why he deserves. Brian Daboll, you can make an argument for. Joe Shane has not.
So even though Joe Shane may not deserve the right to draft the next quarterback, he also did pick Brian Daboll as coach, which that is from what we know from previous GMs, that is a huge part of being a GM, is picking the head coach. And Joe Shane seems like he did that somewhat right, even though Daboll is not he's not a Shanahan, he's not a McVay, and I think we all know that.
Ran out the DC and
right. So
had to fire Brian special teams coordinator because of a lazy hiring process.
Yeah, Brian Daboll's not perfect, and we know that. But still, that doesn't mean that I'm just ready to clean house, because I don't think the Giants should, and I'm not ready to go through this process just all over again of having the first year's draft class is a lull, and it's a question mark of we don't know what we're gonna get, and I would rather have this process play out of this GM and this coach, who in the past, this is what they've done together well, is evaluate the quarterback and pick the quarterback together and build up the quarterback. They were part of situations where they've done that well together. So at least give them the opportunity. Do they deserve it? No, but I think the patience aspect of it, of at least let them do that and then see what happens with the rest of the roster from there on forth. I think that is the best way to go about this process. Now,
so what happens when they're picking ninth this year?
That's the thing. And Bobby, I'm going to make the executive order to Benny Wolf at Benny_Wolf24 is asking which QB should the Giants draft, and basically we're going to rephrase this: are people QB or bust? The people are QB or bust, 100%. They were pretty close to QB or bust last year. They will be QB or bust this year, and I have the feeling. I would like to say that, Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, they will show the same patience that they showed last year, where they will go about their process about picking quarterback. And if it's the quarterback that they don't like, then they won't take the quarterback, right? I don't know what the quarterbacks look like this year. Haven't even begun to watch, but
yeah, we haven't.
I don't think they're going to have that same patience this year. It kind of feels like the people are QB or bust. And it also kind of feels like they showed how desperate they were last year when they had 2 QBs under contract, Drew Lock and Daniel Jones getting paid $40 million. They showed how desperate they were to trade up last year. They were willing to give up a lot of their future. They were willing to mortgage their future for Drake May, and it seems like they were willing to mortgage their future for Jaden Daniels as well, based off of Brian Daboll sound bites. But
we just know the Commanders were never even entertaining that shit.
That was never a possibility. So, and though I'm gonna, I'll go out on an arm of the leg a little bit that I think Drake May and Jaden Daniels are better than quarterbacks in this year's draft class as of now. So it feels like they are going to be QB or bust, which is worrisome because then you can wind up with a QB that's not very good, and then you draft that QB, and then you fire the head coach, then you fire the GM, and then the new GM is stuck with this quarterback, and then you just have to go through this freaking process all over again, and then it's Groundhog Day.
Bing, bang, boom. And we're doing this for a GM who has not shown he can put together a good roster. So to answer the QB or bust question, we do a little bit of early draft preview prep, and I went into not liking any of these QBs as top 10 picks, looked at Shadur, Beck, Achilles Smith, and there was one other. And then I watched a good amount of Cam Ward just by watching other teams play Wazoo last year, and he didn't even look like a day two, just some crazy, some bad football put together consistently, even though there's some wow stuff. Now, I've watched him a little bit casually at Miami, and you do see some fun stuff, but he seems to be the only hot name. And I put out a poll because when the Giants lose is when we start putting out a lot of polls to see where people are at. And 52% of people believe next year's QB will be a first round draft pick. And that's believe, not want. Right now they're picking ninth. And think about the pressure they're under, Justin. I feel the pressure to pick a QB, and my way too early mock draft, which doesn't mean nothing because none of the simulators have players in the right spot, and Christian Gonzalez is available in the third round. And I feel pressure to take a quarterback in the way too early mock draft video, even though it's I'm not going to be able to do enough prep to have a big, a big thing on. Imagine how they are. So,
and I'm sure they're also looking at the pending free agents that are quarterbacks too, and that list is nasty.
Oh, it's bad.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting.
And even then, that's not an answer at the end of the day. It's a 1 year get through it type of thing. So they have that? But
maybe, if they get, and they're not going to do this because fans will say, "What the fuck is that?" Maybe if they get a Jacoby Brissett stopgap for 1 year, because they will know. They will know by the time free agency comes. They damn better know. They probably have a good idea of it right now. They will know by the time that March and free agency comes around, their chances of getting a quarterback number one and their opinions on these quarterbacks. They'll know.
Oh, yeah, yes.
So if they really want to go through it, I would almost rather them do this, but in the moment, it'll be like November, and it'll be October, November. The Giants will stink again. And all that we'll be doing is talking about quarterback, being like, why the fuck did they take a quarterback? But if they really want to just get a 1 year stopgap, because again, they don't like the quarterbacks.
Well, they'll have to get a 1 year stopgap regardless, even if they do draft somebody.
Right. Because nothing is
unless they have
guaranteed.
A top 2 pick and they're guaranteed one of two guys they like.
Yeah. But I feel like this situation that I'm exploring in free agency this year, it's almost irrelevant because they're going to take a quarterback. They're just going to take a quarterback. They have to. They feel like they have to. They don't have to, but I think they feel like they have to.
People are losing their minds listening to us right now. It's another year without drafting a quarterback.
But do you want to draft a bad quarterback? And then we have Daniel
People
Jones?
People would. And it's just hope. It's hopium. But what if? Let me ask you this. Do you have any remorse not drafting a QB over Neighbors? Because I know you were kind of in a little bit of I'm just tired of this shit. I might be my quarterback option.
No, draft night, I had a conviction that I did not want JJ McCarthy and I did not want Michael Penix. I had that conviction. So
yeah, I still feel the same way about the draft, but we did talk about in the moment how it does hurt because
100%.
Because of the situation you're gonna be in. The situation we're in right now sucks. That's something we talked about all throughout the draft process last year, and it's why we were willing to trade up for Drake May or Jaden Daniels, but it doesn't. I'm not going to force myself to like a QB that I don't think is good because of desperation. Which again, it sucks, and part of it is getting a little bit of lucky of the right pick in the right draft class and stuff. When people countered us, all right, well, if you don't draft a quarterback this year, what's your answer? And it's you're gonna have to get a little lucky. You're gonna have to get a little lucky, and that's unfortunately where the Giants are right now. All right, Justin, next question.
Yeah, and this year was supposed to be a year about the rest of the roster taking a step up. And
it hasn't.
my whole theory and thinking is, you want to know what? For the good teams, it figures itself out, because if you have a good roster, if you have good process, if you have good everything, the quarterback spot will figure itself out.
Can I say something about process?
Yeah, go ahead.
I kind of don't care that much about. I know because we compare it to Gettleman. It's like this is, but like to me, that's like a prerequisite at this point. Like having good quote unquote process.
Well, having good process is picking good players.
Yeah. Like I think results matter more than process. Like people are like, oh, I don't like the way the 49ers or the Rams did it. And it's like, okay, but results at the end of the day matter more so.
Okay, but those teams also did show competitive football. Like even Shanahan's
they drafted good.
Yeah, in Shanahan's early years, like they didn't have a quarterback, but even when they were going through like the carousel guys, remember even like 2018 Monday Night Football, where that 49ers team, I forget who was that quarterback, but
Mullins.
Nick Mullins?
I believe.
You're telling me the guy that was the worst quarterback in the NFL last year on third down, throwing all these interceptions and having the highest interception rate in NFL history? So that's the point. Is that even with terrible quarterback play, like those teams showed progress and being in football games. The Giants are nowhere near that. And that's what this year was kind of supposed to be about. It's like, all right, we've had 3 draft classes now. Even if the quarterback is a question, the Giants should still take steps up, and they did not. And now we are 2-6 and the same position that we've been in the last couple years.
It's almost like my draft day speech was setting me up for this moment right here, right now.
Yeah.
You got to show me one. You got to show me that you got the QB already that lifted you up, or you built a good roster that the QB is going to be in a good spot when you get him. We ain't seen neither.
No, we have
Next
not.
question.
And now they're going to be in a position where they're desperate to bring in a quarterback when the rest of it
desperation
isn't
always
complete.
leads to good results. Next question.
Calvin T at CTAETZSCH. Probably pronounced something, and I don't feel like doing it. Calvin asks, is Azeez better than Kayvon? Will he keep the job when Kayvon
I feel like we're missing some questions. We got to talk about some stuff, right?
No, that's Azeez better than Kayvon?
You flip-flop some questions, so why don't you flip-flop a little bit and ask another question before we get into that?
Oh, sure, I will.
So we talk about
Jose,
something.
we'll go back to Calvin, but let's talk with Jose Martinez first at DJ Dominitas. There have been reports from the Giants locker room that you need to read an ad to save the lost season.
That's true. And you know what you need to save the season? 5-Hour Energy. And today's episode, just out of coincidence, is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. 5-Hour Energy shots help you feel alert and energized. Each shot is packed with vitamins, nutrients, and about as much caffeine as the leading premium coffee. The leading premium coffee. That's regular strength shot, 8-ounce coffee, extra strength shot, 12-ounce coffee. I'm a 12-ounce coffee, extra strength shot type of guy. This stuff is like crazy. Like it gets you rolling. It contains 0 sugar. You can drink it in seconds, feel it in minutes, and it lasts 4 hours. Available in a wide range of great flavors across regular strength and extra strength varieties. 5-Hour Energy shots are a portable, convenient, and go with you for that feeling of energy whenever and wherever you need it. When I was, like it's a great, like, hey man, you're feeling a little tired, may have, bling, 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 boom. 5-Hour Energy, it's got you back, ready to roll. Head to www.5hourenergy.com and use code JOHNBOY to save 20% on your first order. That's 5hourenergy.com, code JOHNBOY to save 20%. And by the way, it's the number 5 and then Hour Energy. You'll be glad you did. Next question.
How long do you think it lasts for?
4 hours and 59 minutes. It's a little bit of false advertising. Like it's 4 hours and 59 minutes.
Probably like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
False advertising.
They rounded up.
Calvin T. Is Azeez better than Kayvon? Will he keep the job when Kayvon is healthy?
No, he's not better. But I don't think there's a wide margin either. Like
I agree.
Kayvon has actually shown some better consistency this year. He's 22nd out of 61 edge rushers in pass rush win rate. Azeez is 42nd. Now, Azeez has been more productive on a per snap basis. He's 12th in pass rush production. Kayvon's 39th. But Kayvon's a better run defender. But Azeez does do things better than Kayvon. Like he shows more bend. He's quicker running those stunts. But at the end of the day, like, it's good to see Azeez starting to reduce again because last year was so bad. And it was like, what happened to this guy? We know he was injured, but like, why was he so bad when he did play last year? This year, he's 10th in sacks with 6. But at the end of the day, I don't think the gap is massive either.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. The only difference is that Azeez is just finishing a little bit more than Kayvon this year, but Kayvon is much more consistent than Azeez.
And Kayvon finished last year, too, and wasn't consistent. So
I think Kayvon's 24th in the league right now in win rate. What did you say? Or you said he's 22nd?
22nd of 61.
I saw 24th somewhere. We probably using different
qualifiers
and stuff like that. But yeah, I've had no problem with Kayvon this year. In fact, I've been pretty happy with Kayvon. But I think, like you said, the gap is. I think there's a Burns is another gap above both of them, right? But I would put Kayvon second, and then there's a smaller gap there, and then Azeez. So I don't think that's an issue, and I still think
it's an issue
Azeez,
for Kayvon.
I guess it's an issue for Kayvon. Azeez was already kind of working in with the three of them healthy a good amount. Maybe Burns would get a couple plays off, Kayvon would get a couple plays off, and then Azeez would be in there, and I feel perfectly fine with that.
Mm-hmm. All right, next question.
Jose Martinez. Nope, we already talked to Jose.
No way.
Rob Allen at A-Team Robert. Tyler Nubin has 0 passes defensed, not passes deflected, Justin. Passes defensed and 0 interceptions. He has a lot of tackles. He's second on the team at tackles, but that doesn't always mean much. What is your assessment of him so far?
So you asked for this a couple weeks ago, and I'm glad to finally do it because we have a good sample size of half the season now. This defense is incredibly boring for the safety spot. Like, it's just you play man from depth, or you play middle field safety, or you come down into like the hook curl zone for cover 3. Like, if you guys are fans of the film reviews, which this does more numbers in the film reviews by like a lot, especially when they're losing. But like, if you watch them, the defensive plays are almost all the same. It's like cover 1 stunt, cover 1 stunts. And hey, it's worked to an extent, so like you can't be too critical of it. But for the safety spot, it's been very, very boring. But I do think Nubin's been good in that role. Like, he's aggressive, cutting things off when they do go to some more zone coverages, and he hasn't had to pay for being aggressive. Like, he's clearly better than Pinnock to me, but you do have to like watch film to see it. You couldn't tell that from TV.
I think you can.
But yeah, I guess you could. But like the metrics, like he's 14th out of 67 safeties and snaps per reception, 3rd in snaps per target. He's only allowed 88 yards, 13th in yards per catch. Like, he hasn't allowed any big plays. He's been good in man coverage. The only catches he's really given up have been where he's playing high and they put him in man coverage, so he's got to get downhill quick, and they throw a quick pass and he's there to make the tackle. He's been good in run defense. Not perfect, but he's been good. Like, I do think Tyler Nubin is good. I just think this defense is extremely boring for the safety position. And the Giants' corners aren't guys that get interceptions in man coverage. So, we haven't had an interception since week 1.
I think this is where the pass rush comes in, where we talk about the Giants' defense average time to throw is 2.7 seconds. That is the 6th fastest that quarterbacks are getting rid of, 6th fastest rate that the quarterbacks are getting rid of the ball in the NFL. What's really nice about that is that you see teams that have a high blitz rate, like the like the Broncos, like the Bucks, like the Lions. They're all around the Giants in that same spot, and the Giants do not have a very high blitz rate. And the Giants, as of this year, they are allowing the 3rd lowest average depth of target in the NFL at 6.5, with only the Seahawks and the Chargers being lower at 6.2. So if teams aren't testing the Giants deep all that often, which they're not, then I think that limits Tyler Nubin's overall production that he could possibly have on the football, right? So I just like the fact that how I kind of evaluate safeties on Sundays, Bobby, is if the Giants are not allowing a lot of big plays, deep passing plays down the field, which this year they've had some issues with some explosive plays, but I don't think it's an issue of allowing these deep explosive passing plays like down the field.
Usually they're man coverage on the sideline, and Pinnock is a lot of times the deep safety for those plays. Yeah,
so that's good on Tyler. And am I saying your name in a frustrating way? Because it's how I knew that Antoine Bethea was one of the worst safeties that I've ever seen in my entire Giants life, how you know that Curtis Riley is one of the worst safeties that you've ever seen in your life, is that when big plays are running by him, it's those guys that are chasing them down. And that's how you know that you're dealing with bad safety play. And that hasn't happened this year. And then also, I think Tyler Nubin has been a great tackler. Like, say what you want about him, being second on the team in tackles. I believe Okereke is 55, and then Nubin has a total of 52. Say what you want about, how does that matter? Does that not? Maybe that's a little bit of a referendum on the run defense. I think Nubin has been great in that element and that factor of it, and I think that's very, very valuable to have a member of the secondary that's a sure tackler that doesn't allow a lot of yards after the catches. Yards after the catch for the amount of the yards after the catch that he's allowed for amount of the catches that he's allowed is also pretty darn good as well for a safety that is typically playing further back. So I think Nubin's been very, very good. You saw Kevin Byard have a little bit of he had a good rookie year, but didn't have like these amazing numbers his rookie year. I think Antoine Winfield was the same way. A good rookie year where if you watch it, it's like, oh, this guy's good. He's tackling well. He's physical. But I think the numbers in terms of the passes defensed and interceptions, hopefully that will come with the more responsibility that they put on his plate in year 2 and in year 3.
And we know safety stats can be a little random. I mean, think about like Xavier McKinney didn't get his hands on a football for over a year and a half, and then he's got 6 interceptions this season. And he had 5 interceptions in 2021. So safety, like, it's dependent on scheme. It also can be dependent on the quarterbacks you play, right? Like, think about the quarterbacks we've played. Russell Wilson doesn't put the ball in harm's way very often. Hurts, barely threw the ball. Joe Burrow's very careful. Geno will take some chances, but just didn't happen that game. Dak can put it in. So it's just interceptions are not to look at. But I would love to see him get his hands on the football. But I'm not watching film of Tyler Nubin and being like, man, you could have made a play here. With Pinnock, it does happen. Like the Pickens play on Monday night, where it's like, man, read the route combination and get over there quicker. Have a little more instinct with it. You don't really have that much with Nubin. Next question.
Next question's coming from Giants Future at Future_Giants, our buddy Liam. Do you think we need to sacrifice Steve from Blue's Clues in order to turn the season around? Your thoughts?
We got to do something. What do we do when Steve dies?
Whoa.
How old do you think Steve Burns will be when he passes?
78.
Yeah. So we'll still be doing the show, but it'll be, people will be like, you weren't as good as you were back in the day.
Yeah.
But we'll still be doing it. And people will...
Well, I mean, Mr. Brownstone also asked a really good question, too. I'm upset you didn't include it. I mean, what do we have to make him do to save the Giants?
We have to go back to Charlotte.
We have to go back to Charlotte. I will be going. I'm going back no matter what.
Yeah, we need to do a live show Memorial Day weekend, and then when the analytics team is like, yeah, don't title an episode Charlotte Motor Speedway live show as like our great advice. I'm gonna be like, yeah, why don't you close your mouth, because it's setting it up for the long run to have a great year numbers wise. So sacrifice this one episode and the end of May for the greater good for September, October, November, December.
Odds are Lucas is listening to this. You hear that, Lucas? So
Lucas.
You have
so
to.
We have
let
to
us
have an
title it.
episode that gets like only 5,000 to 7,000 listens or whatever, and you're gonna have to tell that ad sales like, okay, buy in on the season because it's gonna pay off.
Yeah, the Giants are gonna have a big year. you sacrifice one episode a year for absolute dog shit for a year of prosperity. I like that.
Yeah, you know what?
Like
pay
that.
for our trips to Charlotte Motor Speedway in May too.
Yeah, pay. This trip that isn't going to manufacture a lot of views and impressions, pay for it. They would love that. But again, it'll lead to a year of prosperity.
Yeah.
We figured it out. At Tim,
It's called
at NYG
long-term
Tim.
solutions.
That's right. It's called playing the long game. Tim at
Think about
NYG
it.
Tim. What are some things that you guys are most looking forward to while watching the second half of the season? For me, it'll probably be Justin reading an ad, and I'll certainly read an ad, and I'll talk to you about Captain Morgan, the official spice rum of the NFL, the official spice rum of the Talk of Giants L16 tailgate. The NFL season is where legends are born on and off the field. Some are last-second plays that turn the tide and change a team's destiny, while others are our friends who follow the captain within them to make a regular get together into the stuff of legends. So grab your crew, grab a captain and a cola, and make it a story to remember, because legends start when you follow the captain. Like the Yankees. By the time that you're listening to this, we're on to Game 6. They didn't lose. They definitely didn't lose the World Series with Garrett Cole pitching in the Bronx tonight, right? They definitely didn't lose. So we're on to Game 6. And this Yankee comeback is about to be legendary. This will not age poorly. I guarantee it. You're going to like the way you look. Visit followthecaptain.com for more. Please drink responsibly. You're going to like the way you look after you have a couple Captain Morgans. You know what I'm saying? Captain Morgan Original Spice Rum, 35% alcohol by volume. No matter how you look beforehand, you will like the way that you look after a couple shots of Captain Morgan. Captain Morgan Rum Company in New York, New York. Bobby Skinner, you will be glad you did.
You'll be glad you did. Next question. Actually, I want to play this. Someone sent this. This is... You know what got me a little triggered? You know, I don't get triggered anymore.
Okay.
Can JJ Watt shut the fuck up? Because Jermaine Illuminor, like, they got, media took a quote where he's like, yeah, I want to be left on an island, right? Like, we don't have Andrew Thomas. I want to be left on an island with TJ Watt. Because, like, I'm up for the challenge. And so JJ Watt and all the, Steelers fans, which we could say it on Talking Giants, is the dumbest fan base in the NFL, is the Pittsburgh Steelers fan base. Are like, yeah, you shouldn't have been talking shit. He wasn't talking shit. He's called TJ Watt a great player. He wanted the challenge of being on an island. And guess what? The strip sack, the tight end wasn't shifted over on him. And then TJ Watt's other sack wasn't because he did good. It's because Alex Highsmith did good on Chris Hubbard, who we're going to talk about in a second, and cleaned it up. Good God. Be more insecure. Like, you're an all-pro player, defensive player of the year, and you're worried about a player saying, I guess Elimenor's quote was a little more than that. But anyways, just blah, 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 blah.
Blah, 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 blah. Thanks to Research Rick for also saying that Christian Haynes' limited playing time on the Seahawks offensive line appears to be over. Thank you, Research Rick.
Okay.
Nooner, at One Giant Nooner. Speaking of offensive line, who should play at left tackle this weekend? Bring Azudu back, or dare they give Neal a shot? They will not give Neal a shot. So, Bobby, basically, tell me about Chris Hubbard's debut.
Really bad in pass protection. I actually think Azudu is better in a sense. Now, as Hubbard holds up against strength a lot better. But I would leave Hubbard in because, one, they're both bad at pass protection. Also, Hubbard had to play Alex Highsmith, who's, like, really good. But, like, he actually brings you juice in the run game. Like, a lot of those Tyrone Tracy cutback runs were made possible by Chris Hubbard. So I would leave him in over Josh Azudu anyways. Now, that is not an endorsement for him as a player. He's not good, but he is actually a good run blocker, and the Giants need to have some type of strength. So keep running the damn ball.
I agree. Oh, remember Calvin?
What do you mean?
He left such a nice question about is Azeez going to be better than Kayvon?
Yeah.
That's his last name. And he said it's pronounced Tack. So I apologize to Calvin. And that's how I feel about the Giants' left tackle situation.
Maybe Calvin can play left tackle. All right, that's an episode. We'll be back tomorrow with a preview pod. Short week Monday Night Football. We will see you then. Until then, let's go Big Blue.